Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really glad that you've joined us for this third in our series of online climate change summits for the Central Coast. I want to let you know that the idea for this summit began last year when Cal State University Monterey Bay, the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, and the Romero Institute's Greenpower program started organizing what was going to be an in-person all-day summit at CSUMB. But then, of course, COVID happened and shelter in place happened. And so we adapted and we converted the concept into a series of online summits. Last year in the spring, we held a session on climate change and academics. In the fall, there was a session on green business. And now this is the final session on climate action planning. At the Romero Institute, we believe that climate change is the greatest threat facing the human family. And we believe that overcoming it is truly a community endeavor. So that's why we're really excited about this summit, which is all about climate action planning at the community level. We believe that we can create community-driven, equitable solutions to climate change, and that it starts when we work with our neighbors, with our local elected representatives, and community organizations. We have some really great partners that helped make today happen, and I want to recognize them. The Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, the Slow Climate Coalition, Ecology Action, the Central Coast Climate Collaborative, Cal State University Monterey Bay, and Central Coast Community Energy. In addition to our partners, I really want to thank everyone who's presenting today. That's really what today is about. We've got some fantastic presenters who are going to share some great content, some tips, some tools, some lessons, some experiences with you all. And so thank you very much to all of our presenters. I also want to recognize that we have a number of elected officials who registered to join us today, and I really want to thank all of them for being part of today. You can see the list there. Really good representation. So thank you so much to all of the city and county staff who have also joined us today. So the vision for the summit is to help our region establish just and equitable solutions to the challenges of the global climate emergency by engaging and supporting community leaders to develop and implement actionable plans. So there are really three things that we are going to cover today, sort of looking at the big picture. First is, what is a climate action plan? What's included in a CAP? What is a CEQA certified CAP? What's the difference between a CAP and a master sustainability plan? Secondly, why is this important for our communities? What are the benefits of a CAP? Where are there opportunities? What can it do for your jurisdiction, your community? And what are the state's climate goals? And then finally, how do we create, adopt, and implement climate action plans? What are the steps? What are the funding, planning tools, and capacity building that we can engage in? Here's a quick overview of the program. The agenda is really packed. It's all about the content today, so I'm going to keep my remarks short. This is an overview of what things are going to look like. Our goal is to end by 12 o'clock noon today. But before we get going, I want to say a couple of things. I want to recognize that today is Cesar Chavez Day. He was an incredible leader, has inspired me and our organization. And here's a great quote from Cesar. And then additionally, we should recognize that we are on unceded land, that there are communities who are here before us. And I really want to thank and welcome Hua Anwa, a Mayan Cherokee of Mayan Cherokee descent, who was adopted Mexica Chumash, and Canyon Coyote Woman Sayers Roods from the Monterey and Ohlone. They're going to welcome us with a song. Thank you so much, Hua and Canyon, for being here today.
Oh, thank you for welcoming me. Thank you all for being here today. This song that we're going to start off with, it's a Chumash song, and it's called a welcome song. And we chose this song because it's about welcoming the four directions, the medicines of the four directions, the four elements: fire, air, earth, and water. Father Sky, Mother Earth, all these things that we welcome these medicines, the spirit of the land, to preside in this meeting, to guide this meeting. So let's sing this welcome song. Hey, 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 Angua. Hey, 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 Angua. Hey, 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 Angua. 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 Hey, 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 Angua. Hey, Angua. Hey, Angua. Hey, 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 Angua. Hey, Angua. Hey, Angua. Hey, hey, Angua. 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 Oh, I just want to speak to this blessing of calling in all these warriors here today. Warriors, passionate ones, embracing the earth, embracing pathways to finding our way back to the earth, back to the balance of the earth. I appreciate calling on me as a Native woman to be here and be present. As all of us, our blood is red, all of us, our ancestors run with the fundamental principles of considering the air, the earth, the fire, and the water first, because we know our actions will affect the next 7 generations. And so when we act in this good way, in this good, clear way, when we take these actions to bring back the balance, bring back sustainability, bring back these bad habits that the two-leggeds have got a hold of, bring back the cherishing of the earth, the cherishing of our environment. And so I pray to all you warriors out there, city officials, organizational officials, heads, lawmakers, all of you, have her first in your heart. It's a good way. She'll guide you, the Earth Mother. She will guide you. She will let you know the clear choices, the clear actions. Be bold, warriors. Be bold. It is a time we can do that. And so I pray great blessings on this meeting and this gathering today. I appreciate you. Blessings on all. I hope. And with that, I'm gonna let my young one here, Canyon, speak into this circle today.
Oh, thank you, Auntie. I am greatly humbled to be a part of this opening opportunity. I come from Indian Canyon Nation, or the Indian Canyon Mutsun Band of Costano and Ohlone people. My mother is Tribal Chairwoman Anne Marie Sayers. And it's so very important that we consider how we are all being good ancestors in training, because no matter where we are on Native land. And there's something that Indigenous peoples do all around the world, and that is acknowledge Indigenous protocol by becoming familiar with the Indigenous peoples and the histories of the spaces and places that we travel through, that we work upon, that we have settled upon. Because when we acknowledge the original stewards of these lands, I honestly believe that we can lean to Indigenous pedagogies to strategize sustainable futures. And it's so very important because when we think about it, all of us from around the world, we all, when we honor our ancestors, we all come from Indigenous territories. All of our ancestors have Indigenous lineages from the land they come from. We all can honor our indigeneity. And part of that is recognizing our kinship to nature and our responsibility to how we impact the world and how our actions and words impact not only our families, the environment, but the next 7 generations. And so I find it really important that one step is honoring Native land, because that means we are honoring the past to shape the future. And so in my language, in the Mutsun Ohlone language, Ama Pire Takawas means people of this land. And right now, we are all Ama Pire Takawas. And when we take steps to honor truth and history, we are honoring Ama Pire Takawas, the original stewards, the original peoples of the land. And that is an inclusive way that we can go forward, because it's a way that we can recognize the wisdom, and we have to look at some of our patterns, some of the atrocious historical occurrences that got us to where we are. Western settler colonial mentality has been brought up in an upbringing that has forgotten its responsibility, has forgotten the sacred rights of nature and how it impacts the world. So let us reconnect to that. Let us consider how we are leaving a beautiful space for the next 7 generations. So I am honored to be here. Good morning, everyone. Enjoy these opportunities to connect with community. Today is a beautiful day. And remember, how are you being a good ancestor in training? So.
Aho. Ay, ay,
Thank you, thank you.
Aho.
Aho, thank you so much, Hua and Canyon. Really appreciate both of you joining us this morning. And I want to point out as well, looks like Canyon dropped a link into chat, native-land.ca. It's got a really cool map on it that will help you see and understand the Native communities that were here before us. So I encourage you to check out some of those links that that she has put in the chat. Um, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate both of you being here and helping us open this summit. We're going to move now into the session today on climate action trailblazers. In June of 2020, the city of San Luis Obispo took the progressive step of committing to achieve carbon neutrality by 2035, along with 4,000 other US cities, states, tribal nations, businesses, universities, healthcare organizations, faith groups, and cultural institutions. It also committed to meeting the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. In addition to building an interdepartmental green team with city staff, the city of San Luis Obispo has prioritized outreach to the community, seeking active participation and collaboration from its residents. San Luis Obispo was awarded the 2020 Climate Protection Award for its community-driven climate action accomplishments. Mayor Heidi Harmon was going to be here this morning. She unfortunately had a conflict. In fact, she's at a workshop, I believe, focused on working with communities of concern in climate action planning. But we recorded a video message from her of what she would like to share with this group. So here is her video. Noel, we're not hearing the sound on the video.
I'm not sure why that is happening.
Okay, we will work on figuring out how to get sound for the video. Perhaps we can move on at this point if Chris Reed is here and available to go into the presentation he was going to give. There you are, Chris. Thanks so much. Chris Reed is the Sustainability Manager of the City of San Luis Obispo. Chris, thanks very much for being here, and take it away.
All right, well, good morning. It is so incredible to be here with looks like almost or over 100 folks that are interested in climate action on our Central Coast. It's a huge honor. I'm Chris Reed. I'm the Sustainability Manager at the City of San Luis Obispo. I work in our Office of Sustainability, and I work across our department with our green team, has been alluded to earlier, and across our community with numerous community-based organizations. I'm here to talk this morning about our climate action plan for community recovery. Here's the slide from our adoption hearing, which was a really exciting day, a nice culmination of a lot of hard work for our staff and our community. But just before I get started, I just want to touch on the trailblazer misnomer. I think it's a really nice way to talk about the work and what our community has advocated for and achieved. But I also just want to note that almost every single person that's speaking today, and so many people I see on the participant list, whether they're courageous elected officials or courageous community members or all the talented staff in our region, I think are all trailblazers in their own way. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before I move on. But SLO is a special place, and we're really proud of our work, so we're happy to share. Just for reference, I've provided a very long PowerPoint just so folks can have information. In the chat, I'm going to put my email address and a link to our work. Please feel free, if there's details in here you want to dig into, reach out. We always love to give the longer version of this presentation. I'm going to really focus on 4 things, though, for this morning. I'm going to talk a bit about the guiding principles, so the things that we decided upon with our community as we were developing our plan, just to give a sense of what our sort of foundational values are in this work. Talk a bit about the goal we set and the plan that we created and how we told our story. Do a little sidebar on what this means for development under CEQA, just because it seems like that was a learning outcome desired from this presentation and this meeting today. And then close on just like how on earth we're going to get this stuff done. It's a big, exciting challenge and just loads of opportunity in front of us. So As we were developing our climate action plan, and when council told us, gave us direction, heard the community, and they wanted to pursue one of the most progressive local government greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets in the nation, if not the world, of carbon neutral by 2035. There's a million good ideas out there. And so we really wanted to spend time grounding ourselves in guiding principle based on everything from academic literature to real deep interaction with our community, with staff colleagues, et cetera. This is what we came up with. So first is that systems are responsible for climate change. I think many folks that find themselves here today won't be surprised that this is a focus of ours, but this is a bit of a paradigm shift from not blaming an individual for using a high carbon mode of transportation or for not recycling properly, but really looking at the systems that those individuals operate in and making sure that those are low carbon, that those are equitable and accessible. So really taking it out and focusing on those things we can have the most impact on. This also hopefully is not a new topic or idea for folks on this call, but it is for some, that really the climate crisis and social equity must be addressed together. That environmental racism and inequality, that environmental justice and climate action are really, really highly aligned, if not inseparable. So, we're really bringing that lens into our work. The next is that organizations are uniquely capable of certain actions. So the city is very good at, running certain programs, regulating land use. We have things that we do well, but our community-based organizations have things that they do really well. So really identifying what we can do effectively and where we can make space and convene and connect others to do their work effectively. The fourth one here is that leadership's needed. This also, I don't think, will be a surprise for folks on this call or this meeting, but the time to act is yesterday. And so the second best time to act is right now. And we need to move as rapidly as we can. And then finally, that climate action really is the path forward for an enduring both community and economic recovery from COVID, but also it's just the way forward from an equitable and enduring economic development approach. So, these are really the sort of grounding truths we held when we were doing our work, and when we had decisions to make, we would always hold those against these. Next slide, please. Just gonna skip through a couple of these really great pictures of community workshops that we held in collaboration with the Slow Climate Coalition. We did a ton of social media work and keep going through some workshops, of course, and a big storytelling exercise we're going to talk about in a second. All right, one more slide, please. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what our climate action plan is. So, again, we have this carbon neutral by 2035 goal, which is one of the most ambitious in the country. And we also want, we're thinking a bit about how the story of climate action is often told. And oftentimes, you might hear it in popular media, and this is certainly changing, but several years ago, that we can have climate action or we can have a healthy economy, but we can't have both. We can have climate action or we can have equity or we can have affordability, but we can't have both. And for us, that was just fundamentally mistaken. That, again, based on our principles, right, our grounding principles, that like climate action is the way we move towards a more equitable, just, and thriving community. So for us, it was really important that we told that positive vision for the future. And so our plan actually is a collection of stories from the year 2035. If you can go to the next slide, please. So we collected stories from almost 100 community members and then mashed them into 5 sort of overarching themes and stories from the year 2035. Here's an example. These are actual young entrepreneurs in our community that are making EV charging infrastructure more accessible to more people. And we tell the story about a day in their life in the future. And you see each of the sort of yellow highlighted items on the left connect you to an action on the right. And so across these stories, we actually catalog all the actions in our climate action plan to achieve what we think is a realistic and a really positive and exciting vision for our community in the future. We can skip through the next 2, but I've included a couple other examples of stories we have, and I put a link in the chat there. I'd really encourage you to check this out. That middle one there for folks that may not know, that's actually my mom. She was a very excellent photo model for us. So that was great. And then keep going. And then, this final one really focuses on commute. So we really tried to have, of all the different people that move through our community, have that be a representative cross section, and then really show what their lives will be like once we're able to achieve a low carbon future. All right. We can skip through the next couple pretty quickly. I think that most of the rest of today, people will be talking about different technical approaches, how we have a carbon-free power supply, how we electrify and decarbonize and move off fossil fuels, how we create a circular economy, how we really understand the sequestration and environmental benefits of providing climate solutions to our working spaces, working lands and open spaces. So I'm going to leave that for later, so we can skip through a couple of these. But I did want to talk a little bit about maybe 2 more slides forward until we get to the one more. And one more. Thanks. And so one more, please. Sorry about that. And so this next slide is really important for how we're thinking about development. Obviously, people will continue to build things in our community. It's important for our economy. It's important for achieving our housing goals and other things. So for us, it was really important to tie our plan to how we review projects. And so we developed what's called a qualified climate action plan. And development that comes in for review and needs a CEQA process or a California Environmental Quality Act process that's consistent with our climate plan, well, they get to essentially tier off of our climate plan, and they don't have to do additional environmental review. And so this makes sure that new projects are really closely aligned with our climate work. If you can go to the next slide. We actually have a really easy to comply with checklist that comes in development projects. And so this is great from both perspective of keeping very almost almost carbon neutral, very low emissions in new projects, almost carbon neutral new projects, having those occur, but also providing real certainty to both developers and staff when they come into the counter. We know what's expected, they know what's expected, and it's just a better process for everyone. We're going to close, maybe go to my last slide, if you will. On just how the heck we're going to do all this. So just a couple of points here, and then we can move on to our next speaker. I think these are really big takeaways for us, and you might not necessarily see this just by looking at the plan. But first, our climate action plan is tied directly to our budget processes. So we do 2-year budgets, and we have committed to updating our plan every other budget. And so instead of saying, this action's near term, this action's medium term, we say this action is going to occur in the next 2 budget cycles. So we really think budgets are the truest reflections of our sort of values. And so tying it in that way, I think, is really important. We're integrating this work throughout our agency. And these next 2 are really important, that we occupy, or we are located in a region really rich with talented staff, really focused elected leaders. There's senior management and leadership department heads throughout our region that are focused on this work. And of course, a rich network of community-based organizations that care about this work. So for us, it's all about building that collaborative network. It's all about maintaining and supporting that collaborative network, and then working together to really deliver these deep reductions. And so I'm so excited to have this group gathered today and to learn how we can continue doing that. And then moving out of this from this really nice convening into direct action and collaborating with you all. Finally, we don't have all the answers, not even close. And so we can't wait to hear what others have to say today. And we're open to ideas at any time. So again, my email is in the chat box, as is a link to our plan. Would love to hear from you if you have any more detailed questions on all that information we just went through. So thank you so much, and I hope you all have a lovely day.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's nice to see you again, by the way. Looking forward to seeing you again in person, hopefully soon. Okay, we're gonna give the video one more shot. So let's give it a go.
As an elected official, my main responsibility is the health and safety of my community. My job is to know and value my neighbors, listen to science, and do everything in my power to move my city and our society forward with respect and care for all people, including our future generations. In November of 2015, more than 750,000 people in cities across the globe joined the Global Climate March. Now, in 2021, we face what might seem to be some very hard questions. Can we protect the health and safety of our communities at present and in the decades to come? Can we move forward with economic recovery in a way that prioritizes environmental responsibility? Is now really the time to think about the planet when so many of our friends and neighbors need help? The answer to all of these questions is yes. Why now? Standing in this moment of recognition and facing the injustices perpetrated on women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and the very earth that we rely upon for life and sustenance, we are called to rectify them. And amid all of the setbacks, the jobs lost, the lives lost, we have the power to showcase our resilience. We are living in a moment of real and expanded possibility, and it is our honor and privilege as leaders across the Central Coast to recognize and amplify this moment. We have a golden opportunity before us to affect change. From the Central Coast towns of Ventura County, to the wine country of San Luis Obispo, to the redwoods of Santa Cruz, climate champions are facing down and mitigating the impacts of the climate emergency. When we acknowledge the simple fact that we are all connected, that climate action is social justice and economic stimulus, the path to co-creating a vibrant Central Coast is not only possible, it's inevitable. But only if we continue to act boldly, only if we continue to lay the unbreakable foundation upon which our zero carbon future will be built. As we seek to take meaningful climate action, it's imperative that we carefully consider and give precedent to those who bear the greatest burden of climate change: women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and all of those who struggle to put food on the table for their families. Let me say clearly, climate action must be built on a new foundation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that is real social justice, and to do anything less is not and never has been acceptable. And while diversity and equity will strengthen the foundation of a new and stronger and more resilient system, prosperity will continue to reinforce our vibrant communities of tomorrow. The promise of economic stimulus must rest upon our opportunity for bold climate action. We can and we must create tens of thousands of living wage clean jobs in today's industry to empower the economy of tomorrow. Cities and counties that recognize the opportunities we now have will be best positioned to capture the expected influx of funding available for infrastructure, affordable housing, and renewable energy. And your presence and participation here today connects you to a collaborative support network with people who have laid the groundwork for you and the nearly 2.3 million residents across our 6 counties. Building upon that groundwork will lend credibility to your projects and ultimately economic strength for your community. Sustainable prosperity will depend on raising a new generation of talented and creative community members. If many in your community live on the edge of survival, I invite you to imagine them thriving. I invite you to see your neighbors not engaged in perpetual struggle, but instead working in healthy, good-paying jobs that provide for their families and for the world around them. Setting an equal playing field for our children will be critical for lifting families out of generational poverty. When more women and people of color have the means to start and grow businesses, everyone prospers. And when prosperity is built on an equitable foundation, the vibrance of community runs deep and rich. So, are you ready to stand for extraordinary possibility? You're here today to be part of a coordinated effort. It's up to you to both listen and contribute. You'll become a messenger and a change maker. The greatest successes in cities and counties are usually community driven, and your participation today matters because you'll have the tools to build essential bridges with your community's most impassioned residents and most engaged leaders. When people know their voices are heard, trust grows, and it's time to put an end to the adversarial dynamics in our local governments. It's time to develop the relationships between City Hall and community groups, which, based on shared goals, can mobilize supportive voices and facilitate project completion. If we work together in a new way, we can exponentially increase our impact. We will create vibrant communities that foster a circle of connection, a sense of belonging, and committed character in every stakeholder. In neighborhoods where resources, knowledge, skills, and wisdom are shared, we see sharp increases in community resilience and pride. Nurturing micro-community collaboration leads to extraordinary results. When we communicate and work across traditional boundary lines, we can achieve even the most ambitious social and environmental goals. By understanding and working to maximize the connections, our collective impact is mighty. So, I thank you sincerely for attending the Central Coast Climate Action Summit, and I'm confident that you'll come away from today's forum with the tools that you need to help you adopt a climate action plan that lays a sustainable foundation benefiting your community, the Central Coast, and the planet that we all share.
Great. Thank you to Lauren Bell and Stefan Geraldo, who were able to go record that video message from Mayor Harmon. And now I would like to welcome Teresa McClish, Special Programs Manager for the City of San Luis Obispo. Welcome, Teresa.
Great, welcome to everybody here. Very, very, very pleased to be here. And thank you to Chris and Mayor Harmon for kicking us off so well. I'm here to talk to you about building upon some of the successes we've had through our climate action planning process. And lest you think a plan is made and it stops there, of course, it certainly does not. There's so much going on in the climate action realm, but also in the resiliency and adaptation realm. So I'm not seeing my slides, so if you can go to the next slide, there we go. We have kicked off, and next slide, great. We have kicked off our Resilient Slow project for the city. And this has been made possible in a large part due to a $435,000 grant from Caltrans through their SB1 adaptation planning grant. And as the city is an economic hub with lots of connector to adjacent communities, this allows for a comprehensive look and preparation for what we're going to be experiencing, even given our efforts due to climate change impacts. And the idea is to insert and promote resilience into a more innovative and effective safety element of our general plan. So we started traipsing down a path and planning for adaptation, planning for resilience proactively, and of course, just as COVID-19 set upon us. So as you all have done, we plowed straight ahead and we're planning for and living adaptation and participating in another chapter of our community's resilience story. A key part of this effort is the team building, the the team assembly. And this is, you'll learn more through the next few slides, but it really started with the project team, and that's our interdisciplinary staff members in our city. It's a partnership with the local government commission, and they are a partner on the grant. And not to be underestimated, we also have participation through their Civic Spark program of a Civic Spark Fellow. And this is a wonderful way to do climate work or adaptation work. We have our competitively procured consultant team, and we have a representation from Cal Poly through Adrian Grieve. So more on that coming up. But next slide, please. So the project really is making sure we are practical and prudent and in addressing climate change impacts. We are staring down, of course, risks from wildfire, smoke, changing precipitation patterns, average temperature increases, flasher floods. So in addressing these things, we need to obviously make sure that we build on our climate action work. We continue with that community input. We do the hard work, the technical work of hazard and vulnerability assessment. We develop our adaptation strategies. We provide this education. We ensure that we have an implementation guide going forward. And this is in conjunction with capacity building that's built right into the scope of work for the project. And this will include community collaboration as well as internal capacity building and collaboration within the organization. And this will allow us to look at what we need to do to prepare the community through our CIP projects and so forth. And ultimately, of course, it will allow us to have a community resilience and public safety plan update as part of our general plan. Next slide, please. So the engagement, you saw what Chris talked about in our climate action planning. Really wonderful to be able to just continue to build on that. And one aspect, and this is only one aspect that we're able to do so, really going out there, making sure we're doing our community surveys. Of course, we would love to do it where in platforms where it's not all virtual, but we'll get there one day. So maybe we were helped or hindered, we're not sure, with the COVID-19 environment. People are in front of their screens. We have good feedback and community priority surveys, but we really are trying to make sure they're printed out and getting to all sectors of the community, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. One instrument of community engagement we're really happy with so far is our Resilience Roundtable. And the city put out invitations to community members to participate. Folks submitted a brief application and information, and we selected from a great big group 15 folks from different agencies or community sectors, folks with different expertise, different perspectives, and we are working with them through this project. And folks that weren't able to get on the roundtable are invited to work through working groups. We have 3 working groups that kind of feed information to the roundtable. That's natural systems, the built environment, community resilience, our social systems. So that has been a great way, even given this environment, to devise stakeholder engagement for the project. We're really, really pleased with that. And then community stories of resilience. This is, of course, inspired in part through the stories, the future stories that were talked about by Chris in our climate action plan. And these stories we're going after how are people in different capacities adapting after shocks or changes. And we have a variety of stories coming in. We're going to keep building it throughout the project. Also inspired really through the Central Coast Environmental Council down in Santa Barbara. They did this as well. Wonderful, wonderful work there. And this just allows us to explore and really think about what resilience is. How do people do this? And it's been great so far. I cannot emphasize enough the power of the community-based organizations, because it's really through relationship building with them through our climate action process that we're able to continue with that and hopefully build new relationships with other community-based organizations. But really in this exercise, story collection is the Slow Climate Coalition in this instance. And that's just a huge lift. It's a different way to communicate with different folks out there, and very much appreciated and important and very important to the project. And we also have community events. We had a community event where we had a beloved local meteorologist speak. We had some technical work speakers from our consultant team. We had Adrian Grieve give an exercise again of what resilience means and coming out better than before. And also Bea Makaku from Cal Poly, who really gave a very powerful perspective of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is how one way we're trying to make sure that lens is prominent and pervasive through this whole project. So next slide. And yeah, that's really it. And I really want to emphasize that it's just a continuing, evolving, wonderful, challenging environment we're in to tackle climate action, as well as adaptation and resilience. I'd love to leave you with a quote. It's from the book, probably many of you know, All That We Can Save, and this is edited by Catherine Wilkinson and Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. And this quote is from Kendra Pierre Lewis. Sorry, I didn't put it up. You'll just have to close your eyes and listen. It's very short. What if instead the story we tell about climate change is that it is an opportunity, one for humans to repair our relationship with the earth and re-envision our societies in ways that are not just in keeping with our ecosystems, but also make our lives better. If that doesn't sound possible, ask yourself, why not? I like to keep this in mind as I go about my daily work, and I really appreciate the collaboration platform here. And I look forward to hearing what everybody has to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Really appreciate you joining us today, and appreciate everyone at the City of San Luis Obispo for all the wonderful work you have done. We're going to keep moving through our program. Now we're going to go into a series of presentations by pairs from different cities and counties in our region who are working on climate action plans or working on other, I think, really exciting endeavors around climate. And actually, I think first, before we do that, we actually have a poll. We're going to put a poll. You should hopefully see a window pop up in front of you. It's a Climate Action in Motion pre-poll. It says, what are the most effective ways to reach you on local government climate action info? And check all that apply. So let's just take a quick minute if everyone could answer the poll. The information you provide really will help us assess and identify the needs and the assets of our community as we continue to do this work over the coming years. Okay, so we'll end the poll, and looks like the number one answer is peers by about 60%, and then staff, and then news sites or blogs. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to share those results. Hopefully folks can see them. Also, it looks like we had quite a few people join us recently, and I just will say for all of those who are just joining us, for the best experience for this webinar, if you could please mute your microphone and turn off your video unless you are one of the presenters, and then you will turn those on when it's your turn to speak. So now we're going to move into the Climate Action in Motion section of our program today. And you'll see here who we have that's going to be presenting from the city of Santa Cruz. We have Mayor Donna Myers, or excuse me, Donna Myers and Dr. Tiffany Wise-West. From the county of Monterey, Wendy Root Askew and Ashley Paulsworth. From the city of Watsonville, Francisco Estrada was going to speak. I believe actually it's going to be Rebecca Garcia instead, and Steve Palmisano. From county of Santa Barbara, or speaking about the county of Santa Barbara, we have Garrett Wong and Michelle Sevilla. And then finally from the city of Gonzales, we have Mayor Jose Rios and City Manager Renee Mendez. So we're going to start it off with Mayor Donna Myers and Dr. Tiffany Wise-West. Welcome and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. I'm Donna Myers. I'm the mayor of the city of Santa Cruz, and we are just very honored to be here for this important summit this morning. As you all know, we'll need more and more, unfortunately, of these types of events into the future as we work as a region to create a better future in the face of climate change. I'm going to get right into our discussion. Could I have the next slide, please? The city of Santa Cruz was an early trailblazer and established our climate action program back in 2007. Since then, the city has had a climate action manager, Dr. Tiffany Wise-West, responsible for working with the city and community to develop, implement, and report on each of these three plans that you see on the slide over the lifetime of that since 2007. Our climate action work has actually been recognized with state and national awards, and Tiffany continues to be sought after by many municipal governments based on her work that she has done in really bringing our program both the recognition and the the ingenuity of what she's been doing in terms of how the city is really viewing climate change from so many different lenses. We, over the next 2 years, are going to be focusing actually on updating our climate action plan, which will bring us towards a plan that focuses through the year 2030. And Tiffany will be, Dr. Wise-West will be speaking about that shortly. The intention of the next climate action plan is that it will be a companion to the other two documents you see here on the slide, which is our climate adaptation plan, which was done and adopted in 2018, which brings us through the year 2023 and really looks at the health and safety components of what we'll be facing with as a community that is located on the coast and which has many, many important infrastructure and facilities that we need to be thinking about, as well as neighborhoods and communities that we need to acknowledge with regards to a very robust adaptation of focus. Also, we have layered our two climate action plan and our adaptation plan with our recently adopted in 2020, our health in all policies commitment as a city. Our health in all policies plan centers on equity, sustainability, and public health in all city decision making. the city of Santa Cruz's focus over the last year has been to continue with our commitment to climate action and readiness, even in the face of the COVID crisis, and now the recovery for all members of our community. We experienced climate risk this past summer with catastrophic wildfires in Santa Cruz County, and look to be entering into a significant drought period, which affects our entirely local water supply system for over 100,000 people. With these risks here already, the city has changed its way of doing business. We take adaptation, readiness, and resilience as guiding principles for the city's future. In essence, we have to. We have run out of time to not do it differently. And our cross-departmental approach continues to bring forward many recent climate policy and infrastructure successes, including the city's natural gas prohibition, which for new construction, which went into effect in July 2020, the completion of 3 major municipal solar and energy efficiency installations in 2020. And we've also secured funding for nearly 100% of our rail trail segments that provide safe crosstown trails across access. And then just this past week, we're celebrating the purchase of our first electric garbage truck. But with the sunset of our climate action plan in 2020, challenges of COVID, and opportunities to capitalize on new federal funding, we shifted our climate action planning approach. And now Dr. Weiss will talk about that next. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Mayor Myers, for your leadership and being so generous with your time today. So as Mayor Myers said, I work with the community leaders and others to implement and plan our Climate Action Plan 2.0 process, which launched this week on Monday. This next planning phase for the city really is on the heels of adopting our climate emergency, Green New Deal, and Paris Climate Agreement resolutions over the past 3 years. As you can see, our timeline really breaks out our project into 5 phases. As I said, we just had our kickoff with our consultants on Monday of this week, although this project has been in planning for over a year. This is really a people-focused, data-driven, and will be a CEQA-qualified climate action plan project. It will have a 2030 time horizon. And our overarching goal is to determine the most equitable pathway to carbon neutrality, potentially as early as year 2030 or as late as 2045, the state target, and that it will be compliant with the Paris Climate Agreement. I want to say that I've been inspired by our colleagues, other colleagues here today, as well as our community members in referencing work to prepare our scope of work together with our Community Climate Action Task Force. Our budget for this project is $250,000 to engage with Rincon, Blue Point Planning, our engagement consultant, Green Lining Institute, who's our equity consultant, and Hatch, who will be doing the green economy portion, which we've really pivoted to. We also have reserved funding to compensate roles for underrepresented community members to ensure that all voices are heard in this project, and then we're really elevating equitable measures to ensure we have equitable outcomes. As I said, our Community Climate Action Task Force is a key advisory body that's 10 folks appointed by the mayor. We also have an internal interdisciplinary sustainability team, and Mayor Myers and Councilmember Cummings are elected champions for this project, which I cannot stress the importance of. And lastly, we're supported by a Halftime Civic Spark Fellow on this project. I should say that a unique element to funding our engagement and equity came actually from our internal carbon fund, where we put our energy efficiency rebates, we tax ourselves on our fleet diesel and gas charges. And so we have that fund to leverage for carbon reducing projects. We will be having equity and subject matter working groups. That's all being defined at this moment. And I'll put in the chat a link to the winning proposal, our results of our recent community engagement preference survey, and how to sign up for the email list for this project. But again, in keeping with our COVID and interim recovery plan shift, we're really focused on accelerating access and availability of equitable green jobs. We've already begun some of that work with our AMBAG ambassador intern. And I'm gonna hand it back to Mayor Myers to talk about this in the context of our COVID recovery. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yeah, we'll wrap up our presentation this morning just with a quick overview of our interim recovery plan, which we just adopted a month ago in the city of Santa Cruz. Our plan's called Re-Envision Santa Cruz, Building a Future for Everyone Together. We had created a recovery plan following the 1989 earthquake, which ironically is 30 years ago, just over 30 years ago. And so here we are today with the COVID emergency and the COVID crisis that's affected so many of our communities. And we're now looking to re-envision Santa Cruz, not only to get back to where we were, but to actually build a better future for everyone together. And we really look at that with the lenses of being very intentional about creating a municipal skilled labor workforce. People will not be able to succeed in our town unless we can develop the kinds of jobs that keep people in their homes and that provide the kinds of benefits to our recovery goals as well as our climate goals. And we see a lot of synergy there that we can build upon with our work in our various city departments, including our water department, our parks department, and our public works department. So we are going to be looking at a municipal skilled labor workforce development program, and we'll be excited to share that with you as we develop that. In fact, we'll be launching that very soon with a water department focused project on meter replacement, on meter replacement with training and workforce development related to that. We also will be looking at our green economy workforce and job development and looking towards, I'm hosting this year a Green Jobs Roundtable series, which we'll be reporting out to our community. We'll be kicking that off in April, on April 20th, and we'll be bringing in innovators of the green and blue economy, because the ocean is also very important to our future. And we'll begin to explore emerging sectors in both the natural and built environments. The city maintains almost 2,000 acres of open space land. We're looking at things like a local conservation corps, as well as job training for those kinds of good jobs that the state will support, as well as we look to repair so much of California that's been damaged due to fires and floods and other climate related issues. Finally, we'll be looking at continue to invest in the kind of quality of life infrastructure that makes a difference in people's lives. We are building a river parkway program in the city. We will be looking at connecting across town connections through that. We're also investing in additional trail spurs where people can access from their neighborhoods directly into the employment centers and up to the university. So again, we're looking at that quality of life infrastructure. We have over 400 units of affordable housing queued up and in process of receiving funding. Those will be focused in our downtown next to a brand new transit center that will be supported with our partner at Metro Santa Cruz with new electric buses that have been purchased through our partnership with the transit agency. So we are very excited about some of the things we're doing in Santa Cruz, and we look forward to sharing these with you over the next year. And we'll be participating in the upcoming Future Green Jobs Regional Roundtable as well with MBEP, and we're thrilled to be invited to share some of our work that we're doing. And again, I just want to thank everyone for inviting us, and we'll be here throughout the day to hopefully connect and answer questions. So thanks very much.
Thanks. And if I may, to just conclude, Mayor Myers, we will be also at the MBEP June Monterey Bay Career Connect sponsors meeting and the Regional Economic Summit on May 6th to update you on this green economy element. And again, I just want to give the big shout out for collaboration. I'm going to put a few resources in the chat. It's just crucially important. We have a local government academic matchmaking tool, as well as a legislative tracker. All of this stuff will be in the AMBAG funding directory in the near future. So there will be a comprehensive resource list. So thanks again, everyone. And thank you, Mayor Myers, for joining me today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, the both of you. I really should also say a special thank you to Dr. Tiffany Wise-West, who really contributed a lot of her time and energy helping put together the program today and line up some of the content. So thank you so much. We're a little bit behind schedule, so I just want to invite our future speakers to move as quickly as possible. We do have a timer that you'll see on screen once you start your presentation. But I know that there's a lot of great content, so I want to welcome Wendy Root Askew, Chairwoman of the Monterey County Board of Supervisors, and Ashley Paulsworth, the Sustainability Program Manager from the County of Monterey. Welcome and thank you.
Hello, this is Wendy Root Askew, newly elected to the Monterey County Board of Supervisors. We'll jump right in, and I do have my own timer going too, so we'll try to stay on target here. So just wanted to, I'm newly elected to the County Board of Supervisors, but I've been with the county for the past 12 years, working with our previous elected supervisor, Jane Parker. We can jump right into the next slide. And just to frame out why we do this work. This is a picture of me with my 9-year-old and a picture of Ashley with her daughter. And I just want to point out and really just draw attention to, you know, women in leadership, moms in leadership. My thoughts in everything that I do are always looking to the future. It's always thinking about my child, my future grandchildren. And so for me, I just wanted to start with that frame about sort of what drives me forward. We'll go right into the next slide. So when we think about all of the work that happens here, I want to point out, for me, I frame it out as when we're starting off these programs in a community, there really are these, I call it the power of 3. And as all of you electeds here today know too well, no one hands you some sort of magic wand when you get elected. And to be honest, as much as I would have loved the power to control everything, I don't actually have all of the solutions as the elected official. But I do have the unique power to be a champion, to watch for opportunity, to leverage action, and the soft power to bring people together. So in Monterey County, this elected champion for our climate action work was our now retired supervisor, Jane Parker. She created an Energy and Environment Committee and fought hard to get funding for the creation of a Go Green program. But it wasn't until I began working with Supervisor Parker 12 years ago that I began to fully understand the significant power that community advocates have in the creation of policy and the allocation of government resources, especially when we're talking about local government. So I want to call out that well-organized advocates can bring tremendous expertise, deep community relationships, and an understanding. And they also have the important ability to reach out to every member of your board or council without violating the Brown Act. So in Monterey County, our community advocacy came from this incredible group of volunteers that were organized through Communities for Sustainable Monterey County. These volunteers were consistent, they were persistent in showing up to speak at critical public meetings, sending letters when budget decisions were being made, and meeting to educate each of our elected board members. And then this final piece of the power of 3 to get things done is actually getting the work done, which requires staff who care about the work. Finding that staff champion, maybe it's identifying the person who is quietly already doing the work in your organization, finding ways to elevate and support them, or maybe it's about creating staff capacity to do the work. So we've had our starts and stops in regards to supporting staff positions in the County of Monterey, but with a strong staff leader this past year, we've laid the groundwork, and Ashley has really been able to take off and make some meaningful change happen. So I went a little over my 2 minutes, Ashley, but I'll pass it off to you and let you take it from here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wendy. And really great slide there. Just something that really demonstrates what we all really need in our jurisdictions to be able to take action. So I kind of just wanted to give folks that are just starting out their programs a perspective of how things went the first year of our sustainability program at the county. And I shouldn't really say the first year, because like Wendy said, there were people quietly doing work, or and there were supportive elected officials in place. But in my first year of this program, in its relaunch, there wasn't an operating budget in place. And so that led me to really dive in terms of searching for funding and searching for grants that could support the work that we do. And so that's really was a big focus of the first year, was first looking for grants. And then it was also really figuring out and engaging with our stakeholders to be able to form priorities and just develop context that would help us to see our work through. I recognize that the staff time is limited, and that power of three, that concept really supporting and pushing work through. And so one of the first things that we did with the program was to really go out and survey individuals and stakeholders both internally and externally. And so part of the first work that we did was that, and that helped us to develop context, form priorities, and eventually we were able to bring those program principles and priorities to the board this past year and able to get them to approve those principles and our program for the year, so that we had really that support that we needed, and also obtain funding so that we could begin our climate action plan, which was missing. So next slide, please. And so this is a slide that just demonstrates our sustainability program development timeline. And what you can see here is that this is going to be basically a 2-year process for the county. So it is a really long-term commitment that we have going on. And there's several different kinds of phases here. One of the things that just so happened to be true for us at the county was that at the exact time that I came on board, we also were working on updating our local hazard mitigation plan. And I always kind of point back to the local hazard mitigation plan as a good starting place if you just really haven't done any work in this space yet and you're interested in it. I find that the local hazard mitigation plan is a good encompassing plan because it involves not just the county, but sort of all the jurisdictions within it, and really identifies the threats that you're facing as a result of climate change. And so as our hazard mitigation plan is being updated right now, it gave us this chance to really integrate climate change into the plan and feed into some of the vulnerability studies and assessments, and that will then come back to our climate action plan. So that was a nice synergy that we were able to find in the county. And as you can see, we were able to adopt our program goals just recently, and we'll begin our visioning and goal setting process for our climate action plan shortly. And we hope to have the plan adopted by the end of 2022. So this has been our year-long strategy, and we are looking forward to kicking it off. And that's it from us.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Ruth Askew and Ashley Paulsworth. Also, I really should thank Ashley, who has also been a part of sort of the steering committee that helped put this summit together and has really provided a lot of resources and expertise. So thank you very much, Ashley. Now I'd like to welcome from the city of Watsonville, again, I believe Paco Estrada could not be with us, but Rebecca Garcia is going to take his place. So I'd like to welcome Councilmember Rebecca Garcia and Steve Palmisano, Director of Public Works and Utilities for Watsonville.
All right. Wow. Thank you and good morning. Yeah, my name is Steve Palmisano, Director of Public Works for the City of Watsonville, and I'm thrilled to be here to share with you some of the lessons learned in developing a climate action plan in a small, economically disadvantaged community.
Checking on bug when.
Uh-oh, hello. I think it's, as we've been discussing, I think it's important that any climate action planning be bold and ambitious. We simply don't have time to move at a standard bureaucratic pace. Worldwide, 1 billion lives could be at stake over the next 30 years if we continue with business as usual. For us, in particular, it's about environmental justice. The climate crisis has a disproportionate impact on poor communities such as ours. So our plan goes beyond focusing on just greenhouse gas emissions reductions. It is about changing the minds, the hearts, and the culture of our community to inspire people to live in new ways that are sustainable and in harmony with the earth, and that are also truly and authentically Watsonville. So to do this, we've spent a lot of time asking our residents what is important to them through 2 surveys with over 1,300 responses, relying on a community advisory committee, which is also our environmental justice committee, and engaging with multiple stakeholder groups. So how do you do a CAP with a small city and a small limited budget? The first step is to leverage plans. We've saved a lot of time and money this way. For example, last year we got a grant to complete a local hazard mitigation plan. And oh yeah, we can go ahead and put the first slide up. So we're using this, as Ashley mentioned, to create the adaptation strategies for our CAP. And next, really important for us is grants. We have secured a number of grants supporting urban forestry, wetland restoration, and green infrastructure programs. And these will enable us to implement many of the items in our CAP that we could not do otherwise. We can move to the next slide. Our hope is to serve as a hub for climate and environmental work for the entire create synergy by bringing together many partners from local nonprofits and state agencies. Just to mention, I have a master's in ecology, which is pretty unusual for a director of public works, but I see our region as an interconnected ecological system in itself with infinite possibilities for co-creation. And this is where systems thinking comes in. It's another way of thinking about how to address this very complex problem. So much of what we have to achieve is beyond what we can do at the city level, and we recognize that. And so our biggest emissions, energy and transportation, will only be solved in partnership with partners such as 3CE, the RTC, Metro, and others. But there's much we can do within our city limits as well. For example, we have recently re-embarked on a wetland restoration project, partnering with Watsonville Wetlands Watch and the Amamutsin tribe. And we started this project with a blessing by a local indigenous leader. It was a truly inspiring event, and I think it's really important to bring this element into our CAPs. We're also exploring opportunities for urban ag partnerships to pilot things like regenerative ag practices, partnering potentially with the RTC, a local organic farm within city limits, and funding from the state. Another important partnership is with Regeneración, our local climate champion, who is helping low-income residents figure out how to purchase electric vehicles. Our plan is a call to create community, and we already feel this call being answered. So with that, I'd like to introduce Council Member and former Mayor Rebecca Garcia, who has been a champion of climate and environmental justice in Watsonville for many, many years. Thank you. Do we have Rebecca?
It keeps saying I'm unable to start the video.
The slides are on, Rebecca. But we can't see you.
Okay.
Okay, there you are.
There, although I can't see myself, that's okay. Good morning. I am Council Member Rebecca Garcia, and I was so excited in 2015 when the City Council adopted our first climate action plan. And we worked so hard to implement our climate action goals and strategies. And we were acknowledged several times with the Beacon Award by the Institute for Local Governments for energy efficiency and conservation activities. And now I'm very proud of the work that our community is embracing to address climate change. A large part of our planning efforts focus on what's appropriate for our community. Yes, we are embracing new technology like electric vehicles and home electrification, but more importantly, we recognize that the role our city may play is to help shift the systems towards sustainability. For example, the move to Central Coast Community Energy has drastically changed how our community gets its electricity. We hope to help foster similar shifts in healthcare and finance also. So much of what we're trying to accomplish in our plan can be realized through creating healthy communities that thrived in a changing world. So what does that look like? It means that our climate action plan includes strategies to improve access to healthcare, access to open space, access to trails, access to community gardens, access to the internet, and the creation of programs that facilitate neighbors connecting, sharing resources, and helping each other. Imagine a community implementing climate strategy with just a little guidance from the city and our partners. This is all leads to a stronger sense of place, a sense of belonging, and of course, a love for the community. Next slide, please. Again, what is the city's role in all of this? Often it is to advocate for our residents, to help ensure the rules are being followed, such as farm worker protections, and to make sure that our city is developing in a way that serves our current residents. We are starting with a vision for the future and working backwards to figure out the steps necessary to get there. Imagine a community where neighbors are prepared for disruptions and have the tools they need to weather the storms. Imagine a community where people have more connection with family and friends and more time to enjoy simple pleasures like growing food and enjoying it with each other. This might sound like a lofty goal, but once we consider the potential impacts of climate change, this is not a crazy concept, but one that will become increasingly more important and vital. And we're going to make that happen through diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Garcia and Steve. Really appreciate both of you being here today and sharing. And now from the County of Santa Barbara, I'd like to welcome Garrett Wong, the Climate Program Manager. And I'd also like to welcome Michelle Sevilla, Field Representative for Assemblymember Steve Bennett. Welcome.
Great, thank you everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, thank you. My name is Garrett Wong and I'm the Climate Program Manager for the County of Santa Barbara. And then I'm here presenting with Michelle Sevilla, who is also the steering committee member for 350 Santa Barbara chapter. Next slide. I'm not going to get too much into the details of our climate action plan. We are developing one to achieve our 2030 goal. But I'm here to talk about broadly our One Climate initiative, as well as our work with our community stakeholders. So last year we launched the One Climate initiative to create an accessible marketing and messaging platform that helped to centralize a lot of community engagement and activities and information for our community to help to better understand and digest and engage with the various climate-related planning efforts that are going on in the county. Next slide. We did this because there are significant efforts underway that are being county-led. The first one being the Climate Change Vulnerability Assessment and Safety Element Update, which is to help us understand what the climate impacts are in our community, what vulnerabilities we have in terms of infrastructure and vulnerable populations, and help prepare for the future. There is the 2030 Climate Action Plan, which is the project I'm directly responsible for, which is our plan to reduce carbon emissions and enhance regional resilience through collaboration. And then our Public Works Department is leading on the active transportation plan to help increase safety and comfort for biking and walking. And then we're looking forward to the enrollment of all of our residential and commercial customers through Central Coast Community Energy. Just in January, our Northern County and Pacific Gas and Electric Territory started to be enrolled. And in October this year, the South Coast of the county and the cities of Goleta and Carpinteria will be enrolled in Edison Territory. So there's quite a bit going on, and we want to make sure that the community is able to understand how all of this weaves together, as well as to leverage the different efforts underway in order to help raise the profile of the various projects and to make it easier for the public to access. Next slide. So we have a fairly simple outreach schedule, again, so that people can understand what's in motion and how they can get involved. We have a website which is at countyofsb.org/oneclimate, and I'll put that into the chat after I'm done with my comments. But from here, I'd like to turn it over to Michelle Sevilla, who is, again, from the 350 Santa Barbara chapter. And we've been engaged with the Central Coast Climate Justice Network, which their organization is a part of, to create an equity advisory and outreach committee. And this committee has been formed to help advise the county's various One Climate projects. So I'll turn it over to Michelle to speak about that and other work that they're doing through the Climate Justice Network.
Thank you so much, Garrett. And I apologize, I'm for whatever reason not being able to see the slides. So I will do my best. If we could move on to the next slide showing Central Coast Climate Justice Network. My apologies, I'm trying to be able to see my screen here. So the Central Coast Climate Justice Network was formed between 2 and 3 years ago under the leadership of Maricela Morales at CAUSE and Sigrid Wright at the CEC. And again, I was introduced by my day job, but I come in here in this capacity wearing a particular hat as a volunteer with 350 Santa Barbara, a volunteer organization that I serve as a liaison at the Central Coast Climate Justice Network and the Equity Advisory Committee with Garrett. C3JN is a network of social justice and environmental organizations and leaders committed to a climate movement that advances social, economic, and environmental justice for the counties of Santa Barbara and Ventura. One of our greatest priorities as we build an equitable climate movement in the county is to build a network coalition structure that supports democratic processes and uplifting specifically underrepresented voices of the front lines of climate change first and foremost. While these are high bars to set and take a lot of uprooting systemic barriers to leadership, power building, and power sharing, this model sets the stage for building the trust that is needed to work with these communities and the organizations that serve them. And we take advantage and utilize deeply the community-based organizations' people power to inform our decision-making. Next slide, please. So showing C3JN's 4 specific subcommittees. We have different subcommittees that support certain aspects of the network. Climate Resilience Committee works in the planning or resilience building realm, currently working closely with the CEC with the conclusion of their climate resilience roundtables to consolidate the 700 plus crowd-funded ideas for building resiliency And these ideas were sourced from the attendees of these roundtables, which spanned 15 months, and in the past, of course, 12 months of which have been done online due to the pandemic. The executive committee supports more administrative or development work looking towards the future on how the network will expand capacity and work, and finding and securing funding opportunities. The Network Health and Learning Committee works to foster a continued space where members feel comfortable and safe with each other. And what I often like to say is working at the speed of trust. And to keep each other accountable, not just to call each other out, but to call each other in rather to a higher standard, to the principles that we agreed upon in our ground rules, agreements, and our charter, and to build rapport and a space for healing in moments of tragedy, like the recent API shootings in Georgia and anti-Asian hate, to the BLM movement, to burnout that is so prevalent between our activists and those who volunteer their time for the EJ-CJ cause and exhaustion. And finally, the committee with many names that we joke internally, commonly referred to at this point as the Green New Deal Committee, which helps lead our campaigns, doing the defensive work of protecting our land, water, air from potential threats, while also doing the visionary work of how we can move towards our shared vision of a climate-friendly future. Next slide, please, showing a banner of some of our ancestors who we honor and continue their legacy. The current visioning work of the Central Coast Climate Justice Network, and specifically that the Green New Deal Committee is engaging in, and I must preface that all of this is done with the stellar leadership and knowledge of Ana Rosa Rizzo Centino, Vanessa Teran, David Pello, and the committee members. This is their work and their leadership that I'm sharing. And while I have participated in supporting this Green New Deal effort, it is really because of their leadership. These house meetings are rooted in the cross-cultural United Farm Workers movement, which we celebrate one of their leaders, Cesar Chavez, today, and which began on the eve of September 7th, 1965, with the Delano Great Strike, under the leadership, actually, with my Filipino ancestors, Larry Itliong and Philip Vera Cruz. 2 weeks later, expanded to include, once it was ratified by the Mexican workers, and specifically Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, who ratified joining the strike. And it was this cross-cultural alliance and solidarity for labor movement that would eventually form the United Farm Workers Union. And historically, house meetings for the Green New Deal, are adopted from the house meetings that were held for farm worker rights. It's grassroots-led effort to hear from workers how to improve working conditions for themselves and their peers. And so in the past 12 months, organizations across the Central Coast Climate Justice Network, or C3JN, including 350 Santa Barbara, held virtual house meetings on the Green New Deal to gather the priorities of Santa Barbara and Ventura County residents on what a Green New Deal should look like and how to get to a more climate-friendly county. I can only speak for the data that 350 Santa Barbara has produced, but it includes prioritization of housing and transportation, a cultural shift away from coastal elitism and territorialism to allow access, and tuning into environmental justice, and of course, many more specifics. And we're in the middle of digesting that into a product that is deliverable to planners, electeds, and the general public. Next slide. And I want to thank, first off, our Indigenous brothers and sisters who continue to be stewards of the land, and to everyone participating in this summit, as well as the organizers, for having us.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Garrett. Really appreciate both of you being here. Now we're going to hear from our last duo, Mayor Jose Rios and City Manager Renee Mendez from the City of Gonzales. Welcome, Mayor Rios.
Well, good morning to all. I'm the newly elected mayor. I was elected here in November, so I'm kind of new to the game, but I am very familiar with all the efforts the city has been putting forward to climate change. I want to quote something that I actually remember quite strongly from my 7th grade teacher when he was asked if the world was going to end with a nuclear bomb. His comment was, no, humankind will end because it'll waste its resources and it will be buried in its own trash. And so I really think that comes to heart to what we're all talking about today, that we need to do something to reduce that. Our city has been very innovative. We're small, but we're a city that can get things done. So I will pass this over to a very capable City Manager Renee Mendez.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Can you go to the next slide real quickly? Hello? Next slide. Thank you. Briefly about Gonzales, we're in the Central Coast. It's a small town. Like many of our towns in the Central Coast, we have a large Hispanic population, Latinx, Latino, and we're very young. A third of our population is under 18, and we have at least a quarter of our community residents living either below or at the national poverty level. If you can kind of move on to the next slide real quickly. So Mayor, going to ask the mayor to share a little bit about his role. Like you mentioned, he is the new mayor.
Well, one of the things is I commented was we have a very capable city staff that takes care of a lot of this for us. One of the things that when I first came in, I had a question about our efforts to create a microgrid. The microgrid is basically something that will help power our industrial park, which provides probably 85, if not 90% of our employment base. And, with the changing climate, we're seeing more and more rolling blackouts. Well, this particular grid will create green power. It will power our refrigerated dependent ag industries. So as a mayor, I have to ask those questions of why are we spending all this money? But Renee had all the answers, and I think it just goes to show, how this little city can do things.
So thank you, Mayor. Moving on to the next slide. So we started this journey about 15 years ago. But one of the things was to really set up an engagement ethos, which we call here the Gonzales way, and essentially it's love, care, and connect. And we listen, we try and understand, and we try to provide resources to our community. Next slide. From that, the Gonzales Grows Green, or our G3 initiative, set forth the guiding principles. A lot of the speakers have been speaking to this all morning. Environmental responsibility, do the right thing, economic vitality, diversify and grow, and social equity, educate, provide contact and relevancy for all our city residents. Moving on. So we started on the environmental responsibility. It was not a linear process, and we are a small city, so there was not a lot of funding opportunities, frankly, because we're not a big footprint. Nevertheless, the council supported a general plan sustainability element way back in 2011 that led to our climate action plan, a focus on renewable energy, like many partners in the Central Coast, Monterey Bay Community Power, which became 3CE. We went after the low-hanging fruit, energy audit. There are folks that would do that for low cost, and we ended up solarizing most of our facilities. The mayor did speak to the microgrid that we are currently working on, and all of this has helped us exceed our carbon footprint. If you can go on to the next slide. These are just examples of a broad strategy over the years. The two wind turbines that you see on the north coming into Gonzales are powering two of our businesses, so they were used as business retention and attraction strategies. And we did some of the other stuff, the single plastic bag ban, no straw campaign, really have an incredible partnership with our school, Solar Ready ordinance. But I think what was important along the journey was the willingness to learn and adapt to what we found with our community. No size or message fits everyone. Moving on. From an economic vitality, it's got to be relevant. I think it's got to be relevant to your community. So we connected G3 at Gonzales Grows Green to our economic development strategy and action plan, develop job creation through partnerships, partner and incentivize business. I already spoke about the wind turbines. And this over time has led to a pretty consistent tax base growth. You can move on. On our property tax, which is obviously the underlying value of many of our cities' revenue base, we've seen a pretty good trend line up over the years, which I think provides some of the local resources we need to continue to engage in this area. On the sales tax revenue growth, which is the next slide, we have seen some significant growth from about $500,000 to over $1 million and approaching $2 million. So I think from that perspective, you begin to, from a policy decision and from a resource generation, you begin to see over time some really great results. On the next slide, social equity, we did a 2012 community health assessment. We launched an Internet for All initiative, which has been very successful. We significantly increased the community's access to health care and have done other things along the way. So we connect, our climate action strategy, our sustainability effort to things that resound with our community. I can tell you one of the big pride points of our council and the residents is our youth, like for all of us, and we champion our youth. These are just a couple of pictures. Moving on. We did a health effort, Healthy for All process where we partner with the Monterey County Health Department to lead the effort. And I think as a small city, there are many partners out there. This led to a health and wellness element in our Gonzales general plan, which was a result of, again, the continuation of deliberate community engagement. And moving on to the last slide, a couple of the last slides. I think it's a system approach. Participate in the efforts that best fit your community. Don't be afraid to lead and be proactive. Important to develop and enter into cooperative partnerships and agreements. Public-private partnerships. Cultivate the right partners. Not every partner is the right fit for every community. Earn trust and build meaningful engagement. And like any relationship, that takes time. And you're going to ebb and flow, but if you take the long approach, you will start to see some really great successes. And at the end, for our last slide, what has this resulted for us in Gonzales? We're really proud of our Culture of Health Prize 2019 winner. I know, I think Santa Cruz was also one, and we might be having another local jurisdiction get this designation this year. But we expanded access to healthcare. Obviously, our increase in our tax base, reducing greenhouse emissions, have created significantly new jobs, have an incredible increase in youth programs and engagement. And again, I think the Culture of Health Prize 2019 winner really is a testament to the great work done by our community and our council and our mayors over the years. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate both of you being here and presenting today. Really congratulations on all the outstanding work that you've done in Gonzales. I know that it's an inspiration to a lot of other communities in the region and throughout the state. Because we are running behind time, we are going to skip the Q&A, unfortunately, but what I'm going to ask everyone to do is if you have questions for any of our presenters, please put those questions into the chat. Let us know who your question is for, and we'll take responsibility for getting your questions to the presenters, and hopefully they'll have an opportunity to respond to you, and we'll figure out how to make the connection so that you can get your questions responded to. We're going to take just a very short break coming up, but before we do, one more poll. Now that we're done with this section, we would like to get your opinion. Do you have a staff person who has been assigned to develop the climate action plan as part of their scope of work? This is obviously primarily a question for city, county staff, and elected representatives. We'll give the poll just a few more seconds for folks to reply. All right, and this is great news. Looks like about 49% of folks said that yes, they do have someone on their staff who has climate action planning as part of their scope of work. So that's great. About 25% say they need additional support though. Okay, we're now gonna take just a short break so that folks can stretch, go take care of anything you need to quickly. And then as soon as we come back, we're going to hear from Neil from the California Air Resources Board. So we'll see you all in 5 minutes.
No. I lost my jacket.
Welcome back, everybody. So just a reminder for folks who have recently joined or are just joining us, unless you're presenting, please mute your microphone and turn off your video. All right, we're going to move into our next section of today's program. First, I want to share this graphic. It's a climate action roadmap, and I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of the session. But otherwise, we're going to jump into the next section, which is on climate legislation, funding, and tools that are available for you. So first up, we have Neil Matuka, an air pollution specialist from the California Air Resources Board. He's going to make a presentation for us on legislation. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you. Happy to be here. All right. So kicking this off, good morning. My name is Neil Matuka. I'm the local government climate action planning liaison at the California Air Resources Board. And I'm excited to be here today to tell you about some of CARB's resources for local government climate action planning and implementation. Next slide, please. First off, just starting at the kind of 30,000 foot level here, CARB is the lead agency for climate change programs and oversees all air pollution control efforts in California to attain and maintain health-based air quality standards. This means that it is our job to help the state and local and regional jurisdictions to take meaningful action that's tied to science-based targets and programs. The next scoping plan, which is our state's climate action plan for 2022, we'll look at carbon neutrality and how to get there. And as you can see, carbon neutrality is really the goal that we should all be looking for by 2045, according to the IPCC, and is increasingly the target that we're seeing at local and regional climate action planning efforts. CARB sees this as well, it is a state target, but it's a good opportunity for us to combine our air quality, toxic, and climate goals into one vision. Next slide, please. There's a lot of information, but I just want to say one of the most common questions we get around CAP development is what exactly are the state's climate goals and what targets should we as a jurisdiction use? So we put together a table that highlights some of the key high-level legislation, executive orders, and regulations that are guiding the state's pathway and provide a good framework for interested jurisdictions. This table is not exhaustive. It is not, nor is it comprehensive. In the interest of being able to fit everything into a slide that folks could still read, we abbreviated the key policies and didn't include some of them. But these are really some of the high-level targets. You can really see the 40% reduction in GHG emissions by 2030, our climate neutrality goal of 2045, and some of the other policies that form that pathway towards 2045 carbon neutrality. Next slide, please. CARB believes that local jurisdictions have an important role to play in climate action. Local and regional jurisdictions already cover the majority of the state's population with their caps, and we see key sectors where emission reductions will not come from state action alone. We need local and regional stakeholders to help. In order to help promote climate action, CARB has developed a number of resources, and I'd like to highlight those 3 for you today. Next slide, please. Well, so you can see what we've done here is circled 4 sectors that we really think local jurisdictions have key control over and can actually see the majority of their emission reductions come from these sectors. Next slide, please. The first resource I'd like to highlight is our coolcalifornia.org suite of resources. Cool California's goal is to be the one-stop shop for all Californians to take meaningful action on climate change. For local governments, we have a climate action plan development toolkit and guidance, strategy guidance, as you can see in these strategy categories, and policy calculators. We do include a number of resources that allow local jurisdictions to estimate the potential impact of specific policies if implemented in their jurisdiction. Next slide, please. We also have our climate action portal map, or CAP map. The CAP map is an online interactive GIS map that lets the user search by climate action plan strategy, plan type, target year, other demographic information about jurisdictions, really in order to find best practices and key strategies from other jurisdictions around the state. We're working on updating this on an ongoing basis, so it should be fairly up to date at any given time. Please let us know if you don't see your plan in here and like us to update it. But for the most part, this has most of the climate action plans and most of the strategies for every plan that's a CAP or CAP related, so a sustainability plan, for example, in the entire state. Next slide, please. And lastly, I wanted to highlight our newly relaunched funding wizard. Many of you have probably used this in the past, but we just launched our new version of the site. This includes an improved search functionality. And the funding wizard is a searchable database of sustainability related funding opportunities. It lets anyone in the state of California search for funding opportunities by entity type. So if you're an individual, if you're a nonprofit, if you're a tribal government, if you're a local government, you can browse by that audience type, so eligible entity. You can search using a nice new Google styled search engine in the middle of the search box. And that now includes the ability to search by zip code, by specific jurisdictions, by keyword, and by title. So this is really we'd like to see folks being able to use this site to implement the strategies or actions that they've identified from coolcalifornia.org. Come over to the funding wizard, which you'll find linked at Cool California, and find ways to implement and pay for those actions that we realize may not be accessible all the time, or they may take a little bit of extra incentive that that we're happy to help find. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, I'm the local government climate action planning liaison. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about our resources or resources that you don't find on there. And feel free to check out our web-based tools, coolcalifornia.org, where you'll find links to the other resources as well, or go directly to the funding wizard and find funding today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Neil. Really appreciate you being here and presenting this today. And thanks for all the work that you and others at CARB are doing. Now we're going to do another quick poll. This is a third of our 4 polls. Do you have a climate action budget excluding staff, for example, for engagement, consultants, or projects? So we'll take just about 20 seconds or so to give folks a chance to respond. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for taking a minute to respond. So it looks like about half don't have some additional climate action budget excluding staff. And then others do have some resources. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating in that. Now we are going to move on to our next presenters. I believe we're going to hear from John, no, excuse me. Oh yeah, John Grieser, Director of Energy Programs from 3CE, Central Coast Community Energy. Welcome, John, and thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you. It's great to be a part of this event and to recognize so many names and faces. I appreciate, as does 3CE, the opportunity this morning to present on program funding available to enrolled members throughout the Central Coast. My name is John Grieser, and I am 3CE's new Director of Energy Programs, barely a month into the position. So it's great to be a part of this this morning. Next slide, please. Many of you may be familiar already with 3CE and CCAs in general, but for those of you who are not, 3CE is a public agency and is now the preferred electricity provider for 33 communities in 5 counties on the Central Coast. Hopefully you recognize many of the city logos here. Next slide, please. Assembly Bill 117, passed in 2002, established CCAs. CCAs offer an opportunity for communities to join together to choose the source of their electricity. 3CE buys power for its collective ratepayers, and it is delivered over existing transmission and distribution lines as a cleaner, competitive alternative to your existing utility. Revenue generated by 3CE stays local and helps keep electricity rates lower for our customers, while also funding the energy programs that I'm here this morning to share a bit about. Next slide, please. The Electrification Education Grant Program is 3CE's newest program in our lineup and was just launched this week on Monday. 3CE is seeking innovative and impactful projects and programs that will focus on addressing the very real education and outreach barriers to electrification, as well as the gaps in workforce training and development that are slowing the advancement of electrification in the building and transportation sectors. Any organization is welcome to apply to this competitive grant, and applications are encouraged that focus on underserved and disadvantaged communities and that have widespread reach throughout 3CE's territory. Next slide, please. Most importantly to add is that applications for the Electrification Education Grant Program are due on or before May 13th, and that we anticipate making funding selections in June. To learn more and to apply, please visit our website at 3cenergy.org and sign up for our virtual workshop on April 15th. Next slide, please. In support of regional climate action planning efforts, 3CE has partnered with the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments to fund the development of 2018, 2019, and 2020 greenhouse gas emissions inventories for all member agencies. Started in 2020, this program will unite the Central Coast under one regional greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and hopefully will inform and lead to future regional climate action planning efforts. Next slide, please. Similar to the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory Program, 3CE's REACH Code Incentive Program is an offering for member agencies in support of climate action planning efforts. This program offers $15,000 to member agencies who adopt and codify a REACH code ordinance that supports building electrification. In 2020, the cities of Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo both leveraged this program to support their REACH code ordinances. Congratulations to the cities of Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo. Given the significant impact of REACH codes on new construction and building decarbonization goals, 3CE's REACH code incentive program will be ongoing, and we encourage and invite additional jurisdictions to take advantage of this funding. Next slide, please. 3CE launched a new incentive program last month, affectionately called the Electrify Your Ride program. This program provides $700,000 of funding for EVs on a first come, first served basis. Purchases need to be made between February 1st and June 30th of this year, and residential and commercial customers, as well as public agencies, are eligible and welcome to apply. Much like the state's Clean Vehicle Rebate Program, or CVRP, rebates will be provided to customers after the purchase or lease of an approved clean vehicle. It's especially important to note that program incentives are stackable with other California rebate programs and federal tax incentives. Next slide, please. Here's a breakdown of incentives offered under 3CE's Electrify Your Ride program, including for battery electric vehicles, which are your fully electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, sometimes known as PHEVs, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and electric motorcycles. As you see in this table, income qualified applicants are eligible to receive double the incentive amount. If you're interested in taking advantage of this program, please act quickly as funds are limited, and we've received nearly 70 applications as of the beginning of this week. Next slide, please. Thank you again. It's great to be a part of this event. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions about these programs or any others provided by 3CE customers, provided to 3CE customers on the Central Coast. My contact information is here, and I'll also add it into the chat. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate you and 3CE participating in today's program, and really appreciate everything 3CE does for this community in this region. I'd like to welcome back once again Ashley Paulsworth from the County of Monterey, who's going to talk about some other funding tools and opportunities.
Thanks, Benjamin. Okay, so we can go right to the first slide. Very good, thank you. So what I know is that from that poll is that all of our, or most of our resources are limited. And I think, what that means to us is that we're trying to prioritize projects and actions that we're taking. And in order to do that, we really want to know the answer to a lot of these questions. How is that project or action going to affect my greenhouse gas emissions target? How much does it cost? Is it feasible? Does my community and elected leadership agree? And what are the other, what can I do within my own department and within my own staff level capacity, and what are those resources? And the climate action plan can really act as a baseline for us in terms of determining the answers to all of those other questions, so that we can prioritize our actions and move forward. So next slide, and actually you can skip the next slide because it's sort of the same thing. Perfect. So if we've kind of convinced you that you do need a climate action plan, or even if you just have a set of strategies that you want to implement, I wanted to share that you need to get involved in the budget process if you're not already. So a lot of us don't have operating budgets for our programs, and you really can't fund everything with a grant. So even though you might find a grant, you might need to have a match for that. And so you need to get involved with the budget process. And some of the grants that are out there, they will let you use your staff time as a match. So that's something to kind of think about as you're doing that grant search and as you're investigating what's available if you don't have that operating budget. But if you are able to get involved in your budget process and really understand, the timing of the budget, the remaining funds, and any tight fiscal years, when you can make requests and how to highlight plans, highlight alignments within your plan and the mandates of other departments and your elected leadership, that's going to really help you to advocate for your program at the staff level. Another area that I encourage folks to take a look at is the capital improvements plan and that process, because it does and can have a lot of overlap with your efforts, and you might even be able to identify areas of opportunity within your own building portfolio where you could generate some savings or revenue type of opportunities. So for instance, if you are upgrading your HVAC system, there might be a rebate program or an incentive that could be captured for either electrification or efficiency upgrades. And then perhaps there's a way for the program or your sustainability program to capture and claim that rebate or incentive for your efforts. And I'll give you a for instance from our county. So we're going through the process of using an energy savings company to do an investment grade audit of some of our largest energy users. And what we're doing in that process is realizing a savings in our utilities. And we're proposing an energy savings and sustainability fund that could capture those savings, and then we could use them to fund other sustainability efforts. And so we want to be able to set those savings aside. There's also other potential revenue generators that you could work on for a fund as well, such as leasing land for solar projects, creating carbon offset funds that either businesses or property owners can contribute to in order to either avoid certain land use requirements or to get additional benefits, such as increases in height or floor area ratio. If you do charge a user utility tax in your jurisdiction, you could look at increasing that, or you could even look at just tracking the benefits of your program in terms of either those reduced energy usages in dollars per square footage, or maybe if you have some charging stations installed and you're using some of those great incentives and grant funds out there to get those installed, then perhaps you can charge for the use of the station and just capture some of the revenue that way. And even though it's just a little bit, it can kind of get the ball rolling for you over time. Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make here is that you should get involved in your budget process as much as possible, and maybe try to build a fund and try to use that as one way to create a revenue stream or some set of funding. So we can move on to the next slide. All right. So I love backpacking and I love to travel on a shoestring budget. So I just thought that I would relate that to the situation when you really want to do a camp, but you have a limited budget and you might not be able to do all the things with a tighter budget. So, but you really still need to do at least these kinds of basics that you see up on the screen, which is to ensure that you have an inventory and a forecast of your emissions profile, including all the state level legislation or federal legislation that might be forthcoming. And you need to engage your stakeholders and analyze those strategies to see where you're going to end up, and then you need to write the plan. So these are kind of the four really basic steps that you absolutely have to do regardless. And on the next slide, yes, thank you. We have a couple of resources for when you're limited in your resources and you really maybe need to do an in-house climate action plan. So we talked a lot about grants already. And we also know now that if you are a member of 3CE, you might already have an inventory available. And you can use ICLEI's ClearPath for a pretty reasonable price to forecast your business as usual emissions. And there are also some adaptation tools that are out there that you can use as well. So what I meant to say is that for the facilitation side, that's something that if you really that can range, I think, anywhere from, you know, on the lower end, if you're hiring somebody out, like a $50,000 to, you know, upwards of $100,000 for facilitation. And that's your stakeholder engagement efforts. And so if you really need to cut off a chunk of your climate action plan and do it in-house, I really recommend trying to bring the facilitation in-house, because that's something that you want to maybe do, because that way you can stay involved with your actual community, really staying close and in touch throughout the process. I think one of the areas where it's really difficult and where you might need to spend a little bit of money is going to be on your technical analysis of your strategies. So that's one area. If you don't have any funds, you could look at working with academia, nonprofits, or some community partners as well. And then some of the other things that folks have mentioned today are the Civic Spark Fellows and the Conservation Corps, as well as the AMBAG Student Ambassadors. Civic Spark Fellows are postgraduate, level students that can really, that are only about, you know, $28,000, and they can they come on basically as a full member of your staff. And I think that's really helpful when you're looking at writing a climate action plan. Okay, so this is if you have some funding and you're looking at doing a little bit of a higher level climate action plan, you could do a CEQA qualified plan, and you could also really integrate some marketing and branding into your stakeholder engagement, and really get out there and share your plan with your community in a way that's approachable online and in person in those more hard to reach areas. So I think some of these things were on a previous slide, but it's okay. I also want to make sure that I do share that AMBAG has a new interactive climate website that's there to support jurisdictions, businesses, and educational institutions in the Monterey Bay region. And that's they've teamed up with some partners to create an initial repository of funding opportunities. And so sure we'll share that out in the chat. And the long-term goal of that is to create a central resource hub for funding opportunities, planning tools, and capacity and resources. So that'll be it. I'll wrap up there. And you know, hopefully we all can learn how to get involved in the budget process and get a little bit of funding so that we can do some of these parts of our climate action plans and get our prioritized projects in action. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. Really appreciate it. Now we're going to have our fourth and final poll. So take a look for that. Should be popping up momentarily. This is our funding poll. Would you be interested in joining a conversation around how our region and jurisdictions can get positioned for federal and state recovery, infrastructure, and climate funding? Again, for those of you who signal that you're interested, down the road, we are going to work on trying to connect you and to connect each other to those resources. Okay, so great to see about 85% of folks are interested in joining a conversation about accessing that funding. So thank you very much. Now we're going to continue moving into the next section, which is on tools and resources. And as John from 3CE mentioned, AMBAG is going to be conducting greenhouse gas emissions inventories for participating member jurisdictions. So I'd like to welcome Omri Berteau from the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, who's going to talk about GHG inventories.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emery Berto. I'm the Special Projects Manager at the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. Next slide, please. So before I start, I like to provide a few related terms. Really, when we talk about a baseline year, what we're talking about is that it's a specific year against which we're tracking emissions over time. When we talk about greenhouse gases in the context of city inventories, really we're only considering carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And then we express all of those emissions as carbon dioxide. And then finally, when we talk about a community inventory, we're really looking at trying to track the emissions from the community as a whole. So next slide, please. Now, this shows, and I apologize that the graphs got a little messed up. This really shows the targets that California has. And California uses a baseline of 1990, but most cities don't have 1990 emissions. So instead, they use 2005 as a baseline. And so when we look at the AB 32 2020 target, it was to return to 1990 levels. That corresponds to reducing emissions 15% from the 2005 level. The SB 32 target was to reduce emissions 40% from 1990 levels. That corresponds to about a 48% reductions from the 2005 level. Now, in the current CARB scoping plan, the 2017 climate change scoping plan, the target is an 80% reduction from the 1990 level. That corresponds to about 88% from the 2005 level. And that is a current target under CEQA. As Neil mentioned, as part of the 2022 CARB scoping plan, that will be changed to carbon neutrality by 2045, at which point the climate action plans will have to meet that goal if they want to qualify under CEQA. Next slide. So what does AMBAG do, and what resources do we provide, and what tools do we provide? We are the metropolitan planning organization for Monterey County, San Benito County, and Santa Cruz County. And every 4 years, we prepare the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Sustainability's Community Strategy. As part of that, we create the regional growth forecast for housing, employment, and population, and that can be used to forecast business as usual GHG emissions. And of course, as part of the Sustainability's Community Strategy, we're trying to link transportation, housing, and land use strategies in order to reduce vehicle mile traveled and per capita transportation greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of what we've done so far in the region, we've prepared 2005, 2010, and 2015 inventories for all AMBAG jurisdictions under our AMBAG Energy Watch program. And we've received funding, as John mentioned previously, to prepare inventories for 2019, 2018, and 2020 for all 3 CE jurisdictions. Now, through partnerships with SLO EPCD, SLO COG, and the County of Santa Barbara, at this point in time, draft or final inventories have been prepared for every jurisdiction on the Central Coast. Next slide. And of course, a greenhouse gas inventory, and I really want to summarize, I think, what's been said by all speakers up until now, and I'm sorry if this is a little repetitive, but really, I'm going to run through how you can create a climate action plan and what are the steps and sort of what's important to keep in mind when you create inventories. So the first step really is complete a greenhouse gas inventory, which now every jurisdiction has done. The second step is to use the growth rates, so population, housing, employment, to create what's called a business as usual forecast. And that is simply if everything just proceeded as normal, nothing changed, how would the emissions increase? And then based on that, you adjust the forecast, and really you're trying to say, well, we know that it's going to grow, but then there's going to be all these regulations and laws that are going to decrease the emissions. So for example, you have Title 24, and that means that new buildings are going to be more efficient, are going to have renewable energy. So you know the emissions from new buildings aren't going to increase as much, and you can take into account those reductions as part of your adjusted forecast. Now, once you've created an adjusted forecast, you know what the state targets are. And so very simply, you know how much you still have to achieve and really the GHG reduction gap. And that's where you would draft GHG reduction measures. You would have the potential reductions, the cost, the funding sources. Next slide. And this is really represented in this graph. The dark blue line is the business as usual forecast. The light blue line is how it looks when you take into account all those legislation and regulations that are going to reduce the emissions. And the light gray line is the statewide goals. And really what you need to address is a difference between the adjusted BAU forecast and the goals. So next slide. Once you've really drafted your measures, usually this is done through a consultant. You want to conduct as broad a public engagement process as possible to really identify the needs of your community and what measures they want to see in their community, and how best they think that you should implement it. And this is really important because community buy-in really is where I think a climate action lives or dies. You need to have your community behind you to implement these measures. And so once you've done that broad public engagement process, you really can finalize the greenhouse gas reduction measures that you know your community wants and you know you can implement. And as part of this process, it is crucial that as much as possible, these measures include specific implementation and monitoring requirements. It's crucial that they include specific funding sources and staff that are going to be in charge of implementing each measure. And that is because you really want to be able to implement this plan. It's really going to be a roadmap for you to meet your climate goals. So then once you've done that, you create your draft plan, you receive public comments, and then if the plan will be qualified as a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions under CEQA, you need to obtain CEQA certification. And I think, as Chris mentioned this morning, this can be very useful because if the plan is certified, projects can tier under the plan if they meet the they're consistent with your plan, if you use a checklist. And it can also serve, if you're updating your general plan, a qualified climate action plan can also serve to meet some of the requirements that are going to have to be done as part of the EIR for the general plan. And so the final step is, of course, you would adopt the climate action plan. So next slide. Now, you would think that you're done. You've now created your climate action plan, but really, to my mind, climate action plan is not the goal. It's a tool, and we really need to remember that. Implementation is the goal. Solving climate change is the goal. And really, implementation is key to successfully planning for climate change. If we want to address climate change, we need to implement. And so that's why I can't stress this enough. Each GHG reduction measures ideally should have funding sources. You should know exactly who is going to be implementing, how they're going to be implementing, what funding they're going to be using to be implementing. And then finally, you should know what success looks like. So ideally, you want to have key performance indicators in order to gauge success. And then that way, when you next update your climate action plan, you can see what worked and what didn't. So that's really what I want to leave you with. Create a climate action plan, but more importantly, make sure to implement your climate action plan. And if we all do this, I'm sure that in 20 years, we'll have solved the climate crisis. So thank you so much and have a nice day.
Thank you so much, Emery. Really outstanding presentation. That was excellent. And thanks again to you and all of the work that everyone at AMBAG does. Now, I'd like to welcome Lauren Bell, who's going to present on some tools that are available to you. And I also should add that Lauren played a very big leadership role in organizing this summit. So I'd really like to thank her for that, all of the excellent work that she did. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, everyone. You can go on to the next slide. You know, I really like tools and solutions that save time and money. So I'm going to load up your tool belt with a bunch of resources. I'm going to share 7 tools in 7 minutes. We're going to go fast, so buckle up, Buttercup. First tool, next slide, I'm giving you is the CARB Adaptation Clearinghouse. This tool is free and allows you to search white papers, reports, and tools that others have created for you to use as needed. Next slide. When you land on the resilientca.org website, you'll see the step-by-step adaptation planning guide and CalAdapt, which I'll talk about in a minute. Next slide. The step-by-step planning guide walks you through from development to the adoption of your climate action plan. This is a great, easily digestible guide to help you understand the hows and whys of climate action planning. Next slide, please. What I like about this tool is that you can search in different ways to find what you need. In the case studies tab, next, you'll see the default Explorer listing all the available reports, and next to it, the CARB case studies search engine, next, which organizes the available available reports by challenges and solutions. Next. Clicking on the resources by topic tab at the top arranges the available resources by topics such as energy, emergency management, and public health. Next. Anyhow you search the listings, you can sort down even further by clicking the region of the map on the California on the left-hand side filters bar. See how it filtered the reports from 149 down to 20? 20 is much more manageable. Next slide, please. CalAdapt, which is a front page resource link from the Resilient CA website, next, is another free tool that aggregates climate model data for use in your reports, as well as a great visual, next, to invite residents to see what climate impacts are expected at their specific address. This is an important tool, so keep this one in your shortlist. Next slide, please. One of the main positioning tips on your roadmap is building capacity. To get you started is the 4C collaboration tool. Next. Do you need money or expertise? Filter using keywords to find collaborators from universities and nonprofit organizations to consult with your team. Next. Central Coast Climate Collaborative is one of our summit partners, and we have one of the creators of this tool, Adrienne Grieve, on the summit today. Some of you lucky folks will get to have a rich discussion with Adrienne in one of our breakout sessions in just a bit. Next slide. Taking collaboration to the next level, the Institute for Climate Leadership and Resilience is a new organization being developed at Cal Poly. For city managers and planners ready to get things done, this infrastructure accelerator brings together private business experts and students to fast track feasibility studies and design development plans. Next. The Institute is currently developing a resilient energy assessment toolkit. The REA toolkit makes the resiliency and economic benefits of microgrids easily accessible to non-experts. REA will produce technical, financial, and regulatory reports supporting local governments in the strategic decision-making process. Next. While we're helping you build capacity, you need to know about Civic Spark. Civic Spark is an AmeriCorps program with a vision for California full of resilient, equitable, and vibrant communities where local governments and leaders are empowered and equipped to proactively serve the needs of all community members. Each year, Civic Spark recruits 90 fellows like this year's Mariana La Rocha to build public agency capacity for 11 months. This serves large and small jurisdictions throughout the state. Through national service, Civic Spark contributes to the vision for California by building local public sector capacity, accelerating the careers of future leaders, and fostering lasting, authentic community engagement. Next slide. Today, one back. Today is the deadline for priority applications for Civic Spark Fellows, but because you're here participating in this awesome summit, Civic Spark agreed to extend priority application review for participants on today's summit. Just note that you learned about Civic Spark from the Central Coast Climate Action Summit, and your application will be included in the priority review. Next slide. One of the biggest success tips from your roadmap is to always keep equity and community engagement in focus. This equitable, community-driven climate preparedness guide by Urban Sustainability Directors Network is an amazing go-to resource for framing your equity lens. It's got clear frameworks for understanding and evaluating the sensitivities of your community and how to overlay equity and access as you develop your community engagement strategies. Next slide. When you ensure the marginalized voices, next slide. When you ensure the marginalized voices that contribute to the rich diversity of your community are engaged, informed, and heard, the actions you develop to implement your climate action plan are truly transformative. Make sure your team gets full use of this guide. Next slide, please. Finally, tool number 7, developed by Race Matters, is an equity assessment tool. Next. Which helps you measure the existing sensitivities in your community and predict how much transformation is possible for particular actions, programs, and strategies. Next slide. Wow, 7 tools in 7 minutes. We did it. Your tool belt is fully loaded, but there's one more extraordinary tool that my friend Kirsten is going to share next. These slides will be available after the summit, so don't worry if you missed anything. And please know that all the presenters today are here in support of your climate action planning. We want you to come away today confident that we must, and we can develop and adopt and implement a climate action plan that stimulates your local economy and serves all the members of your community. We will thrive and prosper together. Thank you.
That was awesome, Lauren. Thank you so much. And yes, let's welcome Kirsten Lisk from Ecology Action.
Hello, trying to start my video. It won't let me. I'll just get rolling. Thank you so much. My name is Kirsten Liske. I'm the Vice President of, here we go. Wonderful. So I'm the Vice President of Community Programs at Ecology Action, and we've heard a lot today about the importance of community engagement in our climate action planning and climate action implementation processes. So I'm here to talk about today ways that small changes can make a big impact. Next slide. And while Chris Reed was apt to point out that it is systems that need changing, that are impacting our climate, people norm, form, and can change those systems. They also can change their own emissions. So imagine it's 2030 and tens of thousands of Central Coast residents have helped California achieve our equitable share of the 50% global reduction targets, which is more like 80% in over-resourced nations. And while they have, like we've talked about today, they've increased their well-being, they've reduced their social isolation, they've weathered climate impact changes much better through increased community resiliency, and we've achieved equity and just transition gains along the way. We've really helped shift folks from individual inaction, despair, and overwhelm about climate and equity challenges into measurable, hopeful, meaningful collective action toward a just and thriving Central Coast. So how is that going to happen? Next slide. Most people care about climate change, but they don't really know what to do, or they think government or big business are the only ones that can do anything. And yet, when you look at the sources of all the emissions, not by sector, almost 40%, sometimes more, come from 5 basic household activities we do every day. Our electricity use, our home heating fuel, transportation, food choices, and waste. And yes, systems, we're operating within these systems, but we also have a lot of agency to make changes in our own homes and businesses. And with recent technology advances, we now have affordable and accessible alternatives for all these. So while you're thinking about climate, next slide, climate action planning and community engagement, there is a tool that's out there right now for the public just to start pointing your residents toward what are the solutions. If people don't know what to do or where to start, there's a website called werenew.net that anyone in the United States can sign up on and get basic information on actions with some federal and larger any incentives or programs that are out there to assist. Next slide. And so that public platform has your own home carbon calculator. They have resiliency and emissions reductions action information, and you can sort it by I want to do something easy, or I want to do something the most impactful, or I rent, or I have kids. What are the best kids activities? The site is fully translated in Spanish at the click of a button, and you can form teams to work together on the site. What we're looking at regionally is there are customized options for the site that then allow us to form and do gamification, have localized landing pages and resources, and get reports for the emissions reductions associated with the actions taken. So there's a work group that's ranging from County of Santa Barbara Sustainability Director to me at Ecology Action to environmental educator volunteers across the Central Coast working together to think about how could we collectively create a centralized engagement campaign with an online support tool to really activate community action, which also builds political will and engagement in your CAP planning processes. So I just wanted to be here today to share that werenew.net tool is available. I'll put a link in the chat. Anybody, you yourself or your residents, can start understanding their carbon footprint and take actions. And we're looking to see, could we come together to have a campaign to customize those for local appropriateness, gamification, and reporting, and have a deep engagement campaign that really has one-on-one assistance and encouragement in the community for the community to come together, and add an equity elements as well. So if you're interested in that conversation, I'll put my email. We'd love to have you join. If you're an agency that would like to see a tool like that customized for your agency, please reach out. We'd love to include you in the conversation, because we'll be doing feedback meetings over the next 2 months on this opportunity. But meanwhile, everybody go sign up for werenew.net, check out your carbon footprint, and commit to taking an action today. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a really fantastic session, and I'm inspired by all of the great thinking and insight we have in our rich Central Coast region. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kirsten. Really appreciate it. I know that we've thrown a ton of information at everyone over this session. I want to assure you that we're going to make a recording of this summit available to everyone so you can go back and review. And we're also working on putting together an online directory where you'll be able to easily access a lot of the resources and tools that we've been talking about here today. So look for follow-up information from us after the summit. We're now going to move into the last section of today's summit. You go into breakout rooms. We have 5 breakout rooms, and people are going to be assigned to them randomly. Don't worry about which room you're heading into. The topics of conversation are going to be the same in all of the rooms. Our moderators will lead you through those questions. Our note takers are going to take notes. And when we come back, we'll hear some very brief report outs. Because we're running a little bit behind schedule, we're going to pick up some time by shortening the length of the breakout sessions from 45 minutes down to 30 minutes. It's really 3 main topics that you're going to cover. So you get about 10 minutes per topic. And I want to let the moderators know that I will notify you in chat when there are 5 minutes left for the breakout discussions. And then again, when there's 1 minute left, so that then we'll be ready to reconvene. So thanks very much. Hopefully you have some great conversation and discussion in your breakout rooms, and I look forward to hearing from you when we get back here in 30 minutes. Okay, it looks like most folks should be back. So now we're going to spend just about 10-15 minutes hearing from the breakout rooms and getting some reports from them. So I'm not sure who's going to go first. I think Dr. Tiffany Wise West, you were breakout room number 1. Do you want to give a short report out?
Yes, thank you. So we had a really great, robust conversation, and I want to thank everyone in my group. So here are some key highlights that came out. We talked about a regional climate action plan, and many of our local jurisdictions in our group felt that would be particularly beneficial because they don't have the ability to do a climate action plan on their own, yet they want to be able to plug in. And again, it's just too much for an entity to take on necessarily. So there was a lot of support for regional climate action plans in our group.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry,
I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
I can hear you, Tiffany.
Okay, I will continue. I'm sorry, sir. Maybe someone with the technical folks can help you with your audio issue. Also, what came up related to this is that, you know, folks don't realize how technocratic and how regulatory driven the climate action plan process is, which sometimes stymies the ability to tailor and customize towards the needs of the individual community. And again, regionalization might take some of that technocratic stuff and take it to a regional entity to be able to deal with that so that the cities can really, and counties can focus on what's important to their communities. That came up as well. And, you know, things like transportation, some folks have a big transportation footprint, but that is only because of the way that it's determined. The other thing here then, with respect to regionalization, is again, just having a structure. And then we've heard that what do you need to get your climate action plan over the finish line? Elected leadership champions are so crucially important. and to keep the accountability and buy-in to the council, but buy-in from the council with regular check-ins to make sure everyone's on the same page. We also talked about, how do you perhaps decouple the regulatory kind of structure and strictness at the statewide level, and is there a way to leverage some of our regional organizations like 4C or the Santa Barbara Collaborative or the advocacy groups to lobby and mobilize on that on a statewide level? I think just to finish things out then, the last piece about getting ready to make the strongest case for federal and state funding. Again, the regional approach came up. The need to engage upper management, elected officials, and have that two-way flow of information if you're a staff person to work out priorities and get staff direction. Also, the priorities really, it seems like there's strong regional systems in place like 3CE and trying to replicate those to handle some of the shared regional priorities. I think that's all from our group, and thanks again, Breakout Group 1.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. And now Garrett Wong, you want to report on room 2?
Sure, thank you. Thank you to Group 2 for contributing. I also want to recognize our council or our electeds in the room. We had Mark Infante from the city of Solvang, John Freeman from the city of San Juan Bautista, and Jan Schreiner from the Marina Coast Water District. I was really impacted by their shares. They're all small communities. Some are and mostly dependent on tourist activity for their economic drivers. And so I think that represents some different and unique challenges that these communities face when it comes to having the resources to develop and implement a climate action plan, but then also having the challenge of having to balance the need to continue to sustain the economic driving force that tourism provides, but also having to balance the economic environmental impact that it has. And so I think there are opportunities like Mark had identified when the fact that their community is going through a general plan update, which basically opens up the entire kind of charter or the entire planning and all the elements of the community to really reconceive what might be possible and what is essentially mandatory going forward, and lay a new groundwork and framework for taking action on climate. Doesn't always have to be called a climate action plan to be taking climate action. And I think regional collaboration and having some centralization in the terms of having perhaps like a unique position like a climate czar is something that was also suggested. Ways to help bridge the silos and bring together all the disparate parts that are happening across the region, and to help lift up what's already taken place, avoid duplication and replication, and make sure that there's a lot of sharing of resources and best practices and lessons learned.
Great, thanks so much, Garrett. Adrian had to step away to another commitment, and so Brooke Wright is going to give an update from room 3.
Yes, hi everybody. So hopefully I got her notes well enough here. So one theme that came up really early for us was to talk about going to people where they're at, and especially focusing on underserved communities in those areas that we're trying to work in. We had people from different types of organizations in our group, including the Red Cross, that talked about bringing in those groups that are doing other types of work there, not just climate work as we think of it, and engaging them not just in the buy-in for what the program or the climate goal is, but even for the goal setting itself. Another topic around the regional partnerships was to just take a lot of these examples that we heard earlier from the cities of Gonzales and Watsonville and try to get inspiration from how they did it, because they did such a great job, and also partnerships with those who do economic reviews. And then lastly, on getting federal and state attention, we discussed having a strong, again, using those examples we've seen that worked so well in the city of Gonzales and such, but then also having a strong narrative around what the whole region is trying to accomplish, a story that can really get community buy-in and build a movement from that. That's it.
Great, thank you, Brooke. Next up is Kirsten Liskey, going to give a report out from her room.
Thank you. Big shout out to Breakout Room 4. Everybody was so convivial and brought in a broad range of perspectives and topics. And we did a quick poll, and for most of our group, people had a climate action plan in their community already adopted or at renewal stage, though we did have some just kicking off. And a couple of the comments were that we actually have so many assets that are just present on this summit today. How can we really build a learning community and keep collaborating together to forward all these goals across the region? And another comment was that as cities develop their own caps or hire consultants to develop caps, they end up having really similar priorities, things like residential energy use reduction, transportation. And so how can the cities work together, kind of like we work together to form 3CE? Could we form some regionally collaborative initiatives to actually tackle those priorities that many cities are going to share? It was brought up that specific strategies like using accurate energy modeling that can, as far as an equity lens, can project energy savings. That's really a form of fiscal equity that would allow us to electrify low and make energy efficient low-income housing first, so the cost burden isn't shifted to those communities, but they gain the first benefits. Further on the equity element, there was a couple different comments that pointed to finding the ways to build capacity of equity groups so they can have an ongoing seat at the table and a formal seat at the table to really have the most effective interrelationality with those issues. And that also can really bridge both the technical nature of the CAP planning, but also the learning curve we're having to do about equity from an environmental planning side. AMBAG got a shout out for really helping folks get their caps across the finish line. So thank you, AMBAG. And in terms of positioning our region well for federal and state investment, there's an interesting initiative that was brought up. It's called the Central Coast Economic Recovery Initiative, happening in SLO, but envisioned to serve the whole central region. They don't have their website up yet, but I'll put Jimmy Paulding from City of Arroyo Grande mentioned it, and they're looking at kind of beyond caps, but how do we get ready for these infrastructure opportunities? And they're doing some very quick infrastructure feasibility and incubation kind of projects with that. So we'll put a link in there. You can contact Jimmy and he'll connect you up with how to get involved in their meetings. Small businesses were also brought up, and I know that 99% of employers in the state of California are small businesses by count, and 50% of our commercial energy use comes from small business emissions. We don't often think about small businesses. They don't often do their own environmental planning. So really making sure we include our businesses through our Green Business Program and our chambers, and uplifting women and minority-owned businesses and making sure they're included, their solutions are included in our processes, both a climate and equity benefit. So I think I got some of the main points from the group. Thanks for the great conversation, everyone.
Thank you, Kirsten. And from our last room, we're going to hear from Lacey Rock from CSUMB.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to the members of Group 5. We had a great discussion. I'm going to highlight some of the comments. So we first discussed what Monterey County is doing, and with their development of their climate action plan, how the regional jurisdictions, that maybe smaller jurisdictions especially, can benefit from some of that work to help tailor elements to help then build a climate action plan for the smaller communities. We also talked a lot about engagement, and I think there was something that was really interesting brought up about lessons we've learned from COVID around how to engage with communities and communicate with different groups of people and apply some of those strategies to climate planning, which I think was interesting. Also talked about if we do have individual plans, there's an interest in regional plans, but if jurisdictions do have individual plans, the importance of setting sort of similar tracking measures so that when we start looking at implementation and finding progress, we can compare communities across each other and work together more effectively. Also aligned with communication and engagement is just publicizing who to contact if you want to get involved. We had within our group a couple of just private citizens that were really interested in this topic, and they wanted to know, who they should reach out to and how they can support this effort within their jurisdictions. And Ashley shared the work that MBEP and others are doing to help develop resources for that group. And I think if they haven't already been shared out, they will be, as well as education in our schools and amongst the general public. We also talked a lot about equity and the importance of not just bringing people to our table, but us going out and meeting people where they are at. And also, when we're thinking about communicating, how do we look to how different groups of people are already communicating, right? There's sort of subcultures that exist within our society, and how do we reach out using the methods and modes that are already effective within different populations. And then regarding the last question on federal funds, there was an example shared from the SLO Air Pollution Control District, how they received federal funds and then paid for all of the communities to do climate action plans within their region, and that was really effective. And so that might be a solution going forward, but not just then to do the planning, but also to do the implementation. And so that could also sort of be an opportunity. So I hope I represented our group well. We had a great discussion, and I appreciate everybody's contribution.
Thank you so much, Lacey. We have just a few minutes left, and so hopefully we're going to wrap up on time. Leslie, if you could go to the next slide, I want to share the roadmap that we've created for folks. Great. So this is a climate action roadmap that we've created. Our goal is for you to come away from this summit confident that you can create and adopt a climate action plan for your community. We want to remove as many barriers as possible to accomplishing that. So in all this research and interviews and the resources that we've put together, our team has tried to distill the process down to make it abundantly clear. And we've created this roadmap here. So, even though it appears to be an adventure, no one's saying this is going to be easy, but we are saying that there's a clear process and that the experience of the ones who have completed this before you, we can share our insights to put you in the best possible position for success. So with an understanding of your greenhouse gas emissions inventories, you set your reduction targets, and those become the guiding principle as you develop your action plan and implementation strategies. Next, you conduct vulnerability studies in consideration of sensitive communities and building equity, diversity, and inclusion into the entire process. Always keep equity and community engagement in focus. Adopting a climate action plan is our goal for you, but it's not the destination. A climate action plan that sits on a shelf doesn't serve your community. It needs to be implemented, monitored, and adjusted. Other elements of your city's general plan may need to be aligned with your climate action plan. And two tips that have been repeated over and over by other cities is the oscillation between building capacity and positioning yourself for funding. You're always looking for help from other staff on your green team, students, interns, community organizations, or businesses to get things done. This roadmap, as well as all sorts of other materials and links and URLs and websites, are going to be shared with you all following this summit. We're also hoping to make a video of this summit available sometime late in the day tomorrow. We're also going to record the chat, and we're going to look through for people's questions, and we're going to do our utmost to get answers back to you or connect you with the presenters who your questions were for. So I just want to end by saying two things. First of all, if you appreciated this summit and if you appreciated our presenters, use the applause or the thumbs up or another emoji in the chat, or just leave a comment in the chat and let us know what you thought. I really want to thank all of our presenters who brought a lot of valuable information today to all of us. I really want to also appreciate those who helped put this together. Leslie Austin from the Romero Institute staff, Lauren Bell from the Slow Climate Coalition, and all of the others, Lacey, from CSUMB, Ashley Gower from AMBAG, Kirsten Liskey from Ecology Action, Tiffany Wise West from the City of Santa Cruz, and Ashley Paulsworth from the County of Monterey. And again, really big thanks to all of our presenters. And I want to just end by letting you know that the Romero Institute's Greenpower program, which I lead, is actually going to expand our focus this year to also include some statewide advocacy and statewide work. We're actually going to change our name to Let's Green California. And Leslie, if you could stop sharing your screen and I'll just show folks very quickly. We have a new website that we're unveiling soon. You can find it at greencal.org. This is a snapshot of what it's going to look like. There are places where you can take action. And actually, I would encourage folks to come here and take some of these actions. One of them is we're going to be calling on Governor Newsom to declare a state of climate emergency to make available additional funding at the statewide level for climate action. So go to greencal.org, check out all of our social media platforms for all of the partners in this summit. These materials are going to be made available to you soon. And thank you very much for your participation. We really appreciate all of you.